Hello, this is Dean and welcome to my video. You know, no matter how far or how fast you ride your bike, eventually you're going to have to stop, and you're going to need a set of these, brake pads. In today's video, I'd like to show you how to replace the front brake pads on my Harley Road King Classic. So let's get after it. I'd like to begin this project by reminding you that you should secure both your front forks should you decide to jack the bike up for this particular job. Also remind you do not have to remove the front wheel, as I did on my tire replacement project linked to this video. To remove the brakes, remove these two 10mm bolts. Now these bolts don't have nuts on the back side, they screw directly into the brake assembly. Take them fully out and then slide the brake assembly off the front rotor. Now don't let this brake assembly fall and damage your bike. Gently take it off, and here I set it on my footrest. Now we take a flat blade screwdriver and remove this dust cover, which I'm sure also aids in cooling. There are two clips on one side and one on the other. Lay it aside for the moment. And now there's a small clip here. Do not use a screwdriver like I did. You'll see the clip go flying across the room, and there it goes. Just use a pair of pliers. When I found it, I wanted to do a close-up to show you what it looks like. Here's the head of it. It's bent 90 degrees on purpose. Now there are three large bolts here. Do not mess with them at all. We want to take out the smaller of the four bolts on one side. This requires a Torx 30. I'll call this a bolt or a pin interchangeably. But when you remove this pin, I want you to pay attention to where the threads are. You would expect them to be on the very end here, but no, they're on the near end. So take note of this for later assembly. We begin to remove our brake pads. You can see the wear marks from the caliper here as I circle them. And we're going to remove the second one. Also take note of the orientation of the pad so that you can reassemble it properly. For example, both these pads are going to have a hole or a slot in them where that pin goes through. Also note the calipers on the left side and here on the right. All four calipers are slightly protruding. You can see them pressed inward. That's from the wear against the brake pads. Later on, we're going to press these back into place and press them flat so that the new pads can go back on easier. Grab a respirator of some sort, eye protection, hand protection, and your brake parts cleaner. Lay down a tarp and grab this brake assembly and clean it up. This is a good time to clean out brake dust and other debris. Notice I'm spraying all around all the calipers. Here's a close-up of that pin once again, albeit a little bit fuzzy, and how the clip goes onto the end of it. Here's our new brake pads. And one of the two things we're going to do to prevent brake chatter or squeal is take a little off the edge of the face of these right off the bat. So I use my Dremel tool at a 45-degree angle. You can use a sanding block or anything else you choose, but just take off just a little bit around the edge, all the way around the outer edge of all the brake pads. Now it's time for reassembly. But before we do so, we're going to press those calipers back into place. I'm going to apply some protection here in the form of a paper towel. Grab my channel lock pliers and slowly depress that caliper back into position. These press in rather easily. There's the second one of 4. Now compare the two, the top two against the bottom two. you'll see the bottom two are depressed flush with the walls. The top two are still protruding. So let's take care of those next. Apply your protection. Might need to adjust those channel locks. There you go. Press the third one in, and now grab the fourth one, press it in. Show us that again. There you go. Now all four are depressed cleanly, flat against the walls. Now this is step 2 to prevent your brake pads from squealing or chattering. Some brake lubricant. This happens to come in a purple container, and the lubricant is also purple. I'm going to squeeze some out on my finger and apply it in a circular motion similar to those wear patterns on the old one. Remember when we took the old one off and I showed you? Now this is on the back side of the pads. Be careful you don't get this on the face of the pad. Apply it to both pads on this side. Place them back in place with the lubricant facing the outside, just like this. You don't want that lubricant getting on your rotor. Now some blue thread locker on those weirdly placed threads on this bolt. Place it back in position. Remember, this goes through those holes in the brake pads. Tighten them up to specs. And now don't forget about your clip that goes on the end of that pin. Place it back in a position with the head sticking toward the outside. Here's a close-up for you. Just like that. Now we put our cover back on. It snaps right back in place. Now some blue thread locker on the brake assembly bolts. Pick up the assembly and begin by placing it on the rotor with the rotor in between the two brake pads. Now we're placing our bolts back into position. We tighten them down with our 10mm socket. Now anytime you work on the brakes, before you ride, pump them several times until they get tight. Now let's take her for a test ride.